The first season of Ahsoka has come and gone. I've discussed every episode individually, but today I wanted to gather my thoughts on the series as a whole. Did I like it? What worked for me? What didn't? And so on. In short, I had a lot of fun watching it. I felt it had a bit of a rocky start. I didn't love the first 3 episodes, but part 4 is where the story really grabbed me. From that week forward, I enjoyed every episode more and more, and even though I still have criticisms of those later episodes, like I said, they were just fun to watch. I think this series was visually very impressive. I've criticized the volume in the past, especially its use in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but as the technology continues to develop, it's looking better and better. There were still occasional shots that stood out to me, but not nearly as often as it has in the past. I enjoyed all of the characters, but Ezra, Huyang, Baylan, Shin, and Thrawn were my favorites. Morgan and the Night Sisters as well. I really loved the villains and found myself rooting for them as much as I would root for the heroes. I think Ray Stevenson's performance of Baylan was the character highlight of the season, and I will continue to heap praise on that man. He did so much with so little screen time. I also instantly fell in love with Iman Esfandi's Ezra. There was a bit of a transitional period for me watching a bunch of animated characters now in live action, but not with Ezra. I was instantly on board with him. I don't think I could have imagined a better version. It was wonderful seeing Hayden Christensen as Anakin several times through Clone Wars flashbacks, visions, and as a Force ghost. He looked fantastic, and I love when all eras of Star Wars can blend together and be embraced at the same time. This series did a great job of connecting to every era of the Skywalker saga, originals, prequels, and sequels. Finally, of course, we have to talk about Ahsoka herself. I enjoyed Rosario's portrayal. I liked that she was very stoic at the start and kind of found herself again throughout the series, but I don't think she's quite done with that journey. She's getting there. We saw her smiling and joking a lot more in later episodes. Her laugh when she reunited with Ezra filled me with joy. I think we'll see her continue to evolve in the future, but even still, I think Ahsoka had the most complete emotional arc in this season, which is a relief. It is her show. At the start, she is grappling with her identity. She knows what happened to Anakin. If there was so much darkness in her master, did he pass it on to her through his lessons? Will she pass it on to Sabine? Is she nothing more than a warrior? I loved seeing her work through that with Anakin in the World Between Worlds and her eventual acceptance that he was a good master and teacher to her despite his fall. Her ability to grow beyond her fear and embrace hope again worked well for me. Sabine's journey faltered a bit, and here's where I'm going to get into criticisms. I love what it says on paper, that anyone can learn to find balance and wield the Force. Talent is a factor, but it's not the end-all be-all. We built up to Sabine using the Force all season. You could even argue that we've been building to it since Star Wars Rebels, but the actual moment just didn't land in my opinion. I don't think it was clearly communicated what was blocking her and why or how she got past it. I can and have made my own assumptions that she went from a place of grief for her family to a place of hope for Ezra, but I don't think that was visually or textually communicated. The moment could easily be read as she just wasn't trying hard enough before. I also think her master and apprentice relationship with Ahsoka felt like it was glossed over. We had a bit of mystery surrounding when they started training together and why it fell apart, and then the answer was given to us by Huyang simply telling Ezra. I strongly believe that should have been a scene between Ahsoka and Sabine. They were the ones who needed to hash things out and maybe forgive one another. They were butting heads a lot in the early episodes, and then they spend the middle episodes apart, and then they reunite and they just kind of silently agree everything is okay now. There were other moments where building conflict was hinted at and then never paid off, like Sabine being cagey with Ezra about how she got to Peridia in the first place. It seemed like she knew he would be upset to find out saving him and also inadvertently saving Thrawn, and she dodges the question multiple times, but we never see that reaction to him finding out. Speaking of Thrawn, although I overall liked his portrayal and think Lars Mikkelsen did a great job, I'm not crazy about how the character is being written so far. His forces would lose a battle and he would claim it's actually a long-term victory, or they were just acceptable losses, which is absolutely something he's done in the books, but Timothy Zahn is able to write that character in a way that I believe him when he says that. Filoni's version of Thrawn in Star Wars Rebels and Ahsoka is still a villain I like a lot. I think he did a good job establishing that Thrawn is more thoughtful and competent, and he doesn't underestimate his enemies, but he still doesn't quite live up to the book version of the character for me. I know Dave consulted with Timothy Zahn, but I don't know how far that consultation goes into the actual writing. I wouldn't mind at all if Zahn were brought onto the actual writing staff in a larger position, even if it's just to iron out Thrawn a little bit more. Because right now, I don't know if he's been set up as the big bad he needs to be. I was really hoping to see him swoop in and crush some New Republic forces this season. That didn't happen, and I'm okay with it. I know that's something that will will happen, and I look forward to having a big ol' space battle. It's strange because I don't need to see Thrawn in action to know his return is bad, but I think anyone who hasn't seen Star Wars Rebels or read the books needs to see why he is such a threat instead of simply being told over and over. I think a lot of my issues come down to timing and the nature of the streaming business right now. There were a lot of quips about how Ahsoka was basically Star Wars Rebels Season 5, which makes some sense, but I also wonder what it would have been like if it really were. For some reason, the animated series still get to have nice long seasons. The Bad Batch is twice the length of Ahsoka. If Ahsoka were able to be that long, I think we would have been able to spend a lot more time with the characters and their journeys. The structure may have been very much the same. The first half would be Ahsoka and Sabine butting heads while investigating what Morgan was up to. They would occasionally be interrupted by Marok or Shin or Baylan. Morgan would build up the Eye of Sion over time, and then in part 4 she would have escaped, and that would have been a solid mid-season finale. Then the second half, yes, would still play out the same, but Sabine and Ahsoka would spend more time apart. There's a line where Ahsoka asks if Sabine has kept up with her training in her absence, and they haven't been apart that long, and Sabine was a captive. When would she have had time to train? But with more episodes, we could have actually seen that, instead of Sabine just telling us that she has been. I think Ahsoka had a lot of that, telling but not showing. I get the impression story beats were rushed along and compressed to fit into 8 episodes when the story probably warranted more. I think if it had more episodes, some fans may have cried filler like they did in the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, or the Bad Batch, but those episodes could have provided valuable character development. Andor got 12 episodes, so why not Ahsoka or any of the other series? I think even 2 more episodes would have been great, giving more time for Sabine's journey to make it feel as satisfying as Ahsoka's. Speaking of Andor, I'm shifting back out of criticisms and into things I love again, because I love that Andor and Ahsoka live in the same universe. Immediately on Twitter, I saw people drawing lines in the sand demanding you have to pick one or the other. I'm not saying it's bad to compare them, I have my own preferences, but also the 2 shows couldn't be more different. What that tweet is really asking is, do you prefer more grounded storytelling or high fantasy? And I actually prefer variety. Part of what makes Star Wars so great to me is that it can encompass multiple kinds of storytelling. I love Andor to death, but I also loved seeing Night Sisters resurrecting stormtroopers and Jedi riding wolves to storm the gates of a mountain fortress. Star Wars stays fresh because it offers different stories for different people. I can't wait for Andor Season 2, but I'm also so hyped for Ahsoka Season 2, or wherever this story continues. I felt a lack of resolution in some of the storylines, namely Baylan and Shin. I think the writing could have benefited from more time. I didn't end this season feeling completely satisfied, but it did leave me wanting more. It left me wanting to see what happens next. I know I will be excited when we get an announcement for more, which will hopefully come shortly after the SAG strike ends. Which, by the way, through all of this, I want to say congratulations to the WGA for striking what sounds like a great deal moving forward in the streaming business. Hopefully SAG negotiates something similar. I know they're in the middle of negotiations as I'm making this video. The future of streaming is up in the air right now, but I'm optimistic, and no matter what happens, I'm glad the people who actually create the stories we love to watch and talk about will be getting paid fairly for creating them. But that's all I have to say about this season of Ahsoka. It wasn't perfect, but I had so much fun watching it, and I look forward to more. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Check out this playlist if you want to see my episodic reviews. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for, yes, even more Ahsoka coverage, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page for video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.